So, Mike, Spotify is the largest music streaming platform in the world.
Indeed it
is. It is teaming up with Netflix, the largest TV streaming platform in the world. Two mega media giants are teaming up. I would love to hear your thoughts.
Well, it's like if you stepped outside one day and Godzilla and King Kong walking down the street holding hands, I don't think anything's going to stand in their way. So the first thing that jumps out to me is that everything old is new again. The thing that I immediately think of when I hear this story is when brands, D2C brands, digital native brands, organizations like Warby Parker, who really struck out and differentiated themselves in that they did not have a physical location and that they worked directly with you. When they started building brick and mortars, it just gave this feel of like there's just this cyclical nature in absolutely everything, and certainly business and marketing is no different. Yeah, I remember us watching, my wife and I, quote unquote, watching the Serial podcast, which was a purely audio format at the time because podcasting was new to both of us. So we were like literally streaming it on our TV and sitting there as if there were any video. Then I watched the space really evolve and come into itself where, in the pure audio things, formats would be all over the place. You'd get 1 2.5 hour episode, 1 hour and 10-minute episode. It was really focusing in on the content. And now here we are, more and more, there is a video audio hybrid, pointing to ourselves. I'm not, we're right here along riding this wave. And I've seen the segments and each episodes become a little bit more uniform. And here we have the final form of audio podcasts. Video audio podcasts now streaming on a TV streamer. And it just, one thing that says to me as a marketer is that maybe we are looking at formats and platforms a little too closely.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't think that podcasts became more interesting because they added a video element. I think they added a video element so that they can be discoverable in more places.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
And so I think that, it isn't about people want 30 minutes of video. Nobody goes onto any platform anywhere being like, you know what I need? 10 minutes of anything. Or you know what I need? A video of anything. These podcasts have grown to the point where they're now becoming Netflix programming because they have engaging hosts who are genuinely passionate about what they're talking about. And through a lot of, testing and learning have come to the formats and the segments and the energy and the everything that they know their customers, their tribe is going to love.
Yeah, it is sort of the logical conclusion of just social media in general in the 21st century, in the digital age. I remember back in the years ago now when I was in the director of social media role here at the ANA, having conversations with people about like people are logging on to Facebook or they're logging on to Instagram. They don't know what they're going to want to look at. They just want to scroll their news feed, and it's up to you to sort of catch their attention and give them things that make sense for whatever environment they're in. And this, at the time, the discussion was about like the need to caption our videos because they may be watching stuff in a soundless environment, but they still want to watch something. You have to give them that opportunity. And this is similar. Podcasts were once an audio-only format. I've actually had debates with people in recent years about, like, is it really a podcast anymore if you're doing all video? Because I've been a big proponent of this, as you know, pushing to get to this point where we're just doing a full video show.
Absolutely.
And people saying, like, well, that's like a TV show. It's not really a podcast anymore. And pointing out, like, within the last 2 years, YouTube has quite literally become the #1 podcasting platform on the internet.
Yeah.
So it is still a podcast. It's just an evolution and one that, like I said, it's the logical conclusion. Interesting on that is Netflix noted that this deal prevents the show from airing, or prevents the shows that, the podcast that will be airing on Netflix from airing in their entirety on YouTube, which is Netflix's biggest competitor, according to the New York Times. Couple more stats here for you, Mike. Video podcasting continues to proliferate rapidly, spurred by smart TV adoption. 30% of podcast listeners between the ages of 15 and 29 mostly watch video with some audio, eMarketer says. Another 22% listen to and watch video equally. Older consumers tend to listen to audio only. And a lot of times this is passive watching. You know, I know I'll put on something on YouTube while I'm cooking. I'm not really looking at the TV. I'm listening to it, but the video is still running. That's just the place I like to go, or, you know, that's how I like to engage with the podcast. So there's another question here. You know, I would argue not every brand needs to have a podcast, right? And I feel funny saying that as a producer of this podcast, which is branded. But, you know, if you're in a manufacturing company or something, you know, you do HVAC, I don't really know that you need to have a podcast. But with this expansion, with this opportunity to get more eyeballs, eardrums in, you know, focused on new creators, new shows, new podcasts, it does sort of make it so that brands need to be thinking about this space more, and maybe not creating their own content, but at least thinking about how they can engage with some of these people who are making these types of shows. You had said before we started recording here, a very interesting thing that you believe now about podcasters and content creators. Do you remember what that was?
Was this about their role in the hierarchy of quote-unquote micro-influencers? Yes. Okay, so this is just my personal belief, but I believe in the universe of micro-influencers that podcasters have a depth of engagement and connection that, I'm sorry, but other types of creators, influencers, and social media personalities do not have. Rich Antonello of Uproxx,
yes.
You know, a view on YouTube and a view on TikTok are not the same thing. They both have value, but they are not the same thing.
Right.
Very much so. If you're a gardener on Instagram or TikTok and you have 5,000 followers, of course they look to you. Of course you're providing value. Of course there's a connection there. If you have a podcast with 5,000 weekly listeners, they're spending 30, 60, 90, 120 minutes with that person or persons every single week.
Yeah.
You develop like a weird parasocial friendship thing because that was the initial draw of podcasting. It felt like you were hanging out with your friends and listening to the interesting thoughts they had on the topics you cared about.
Right.
So on the thing of like not every brand should have a podcast. Not every brand should have a podcast. But you make a very good point, and it reminds me of our conversation with Ro Patrick of the Ad Council that you don't always need to be leading the parade. You know what I mean? You can be part of that, that experience without necessarily having to be the center of attention. So maybe there are passion areas and communities where you can reach out, especially a big brand reaching out to a smaller podcast. Trust me, they will listen and be very excited that you gave half a crap about, can we make something work here?
Yeah.
And now you're cued into a rabidly loyal fan base. So, but I think that I think a podcast should never be on anybody's checklist. Sure. Let me just say that. Like that, a social page, you should probably be at least present on social, because I think that's another thing. YouTube, putting your podcast on YouTube just makes you available and present in more spaces that people already are.
100%.
That's good marketing in the modern age.
Oh, yep.
Sorry. But if there is organic momentum, if there are somebody in your comms department is just an absolute charisma machine and they care about HVAC more than anybody you've ever met, and they're always bringing these new articles, like if there's something there, go ahead and explore it, or bring that person to every conversation they can be in. But let me just tell you, and I think Ryan will back me up on this.
We'll see.
Starting a podcast is not a shoulder shrug decision. Do you agree with me, Ryan?
I do agree with you. There have been many conversations we've had through the years in our role here with multimedia, where people are like, yeah, let's just do a podcast. It's like, okay, what's the podcast? It's just a podcast. It's like, well, that's not it's a little harder than that.
Yeah.
And there needs to be consistent content. There needs to be, it's an undertaking for sure. It could be a full-time job.
Absolutely.
As it turns out.